Hello folks, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'd like to talk about some general piercing suggestions for my transmasculine folks out there. Now I'm going to start this video with a little bit of a disclaimer that I always suggest going and talking to an experienced piercer in person. This video is just intended for inspiration, to give you some ideas of piercing projects that you might want to pursue or you might want to look into or that might feel affirming for you. This video does not replace an actual in-person one-on-one consultation with an experienced piercer who can assess your anatomy and ensure that it's suitable for the piercings you want, who can talk to you about your lifestyle, your body, your needs, and make sure that these piercings are going to be right for you, who's going to make sure that these are going to be reasonable to heal for you, or any of those factors. Those are all things that need to be done in person with an experienced piercer. I am just here to give some suggestions of projects that I've done that I've seen be very successful, very affirming, very functional for people, and sort of give you like a jumping off point and some inspiration for some things that you might enjoy. Now that being said, I have had folks for years now probably ask me if I could do suggestions for affirming genital piercings for trans men or affirming genital piercings for trans women. And I've always been a little hesitant to put together content like that because there's no one size fits all in piercings. And how can I, without knowing someone's body, someone's anatomy, someone's lifestyle, someone's needs, someone's goals, someone's preferences, give an accurate suggestion as to what works with their body? Like, this is all stuff that needs to happen in person. And I felt that way for a long time. And recently, I feel like I'm sort of relaxing a little bit with how strict I used to be about this. Like, yes, I do understand that this doesn't replace an in-person consultation or interaction with a piercer, but with how limited information is about some of this stuff already online and the looming fear that gender-affirming care medically is going to become less and less accessible, I think it's important that trans piercers and trans tattoo artists and trans service providers try to do our best to fill that gap and talk about ways that we can still find affirmation and can still find love and healing and comfort in our bodies through ways that might not look like hormones or surgery or your classic medical transition. And I think putting that information out there, at least just to inspire folks to do some more research or connect with local professionals in their area, isn't necessarily a bad thing. So today, I'd like to talk about some of my favorite genital piercing combos for transmasculine individuals. Second, small disclaimer to this, I am going to use anatomical terms in this video to make things as easy as possible for folks to research and find more about and find piercers who offer these services. If these terms do not align with you and the language you like to use for your body yourself, that's totally fine. And when you have a one-on-one interaction with a piercer, you can use terminology that feels comfortable for you. And please note that my decision to use anatomical terms in this video is in no way meant to be dysphoric or reductive or in any way make you feel less about your anatomy. I just want to make sure the information is spread as clearly as possible. And I personally think that using anatomical and medical terms will be the best way to do that. But if anyone has any suggestions for better language or suggestions for how I should go about discussing some of these things in future videos or posts, I would love to hear that too. So of course, I gotta start with one of my favorite projects I do, large gauge outers. These are piercings done through the outer labia, so the outer lips of the vulva, and I do them typically anywhere from like an 8 to a 6 gauge usually for this type of project. And our goal is to eventually wear some pretty chunky rings when things are fully healed. And I have a whole video that goes in depth about them here on YouTube. I'll link that here in this video. But generally the concept is to create the sensation of a scrotum or external genitalia. Now, for cis clients getting outers pierced, usually the big complaint is that the initial piercing jewelry, which has to be oversized to allow for swelling and is most commonly hoops, is a little bit uncomfortable. You're like walking around and sometimes things get like caught in your underwear and you gotta like adjust things and it feels a little funky and it like gets in the way. You gotta stand with your legs like a little wider. You gotta just, I don't know, account for the fact that you've got like 1/2 inch or 5/8 rings of metal sitting between your legs now. And that tended to be like a con of outers for a lot of folks. People just couldn't wait till they could get to their downsize, till they could get teeny tiny little rings, to wear little curves or straight barbells. But that is what we are aiming for when we are doing this as a gender affirming project for transmasculine folks. Because it does change the way you walk, move, sit, how your clothing fits. Now, if you walk with your thighs a little close together and you take a step wrong, your underwear will bunch around your outers and it hurts. That feels uncomfortable. And then you have to do like a little like adjustment on the street. And not gonna lie, as someone who has some of these piercings myself, the first few times I did that were very difficult because I was very socialized. Like, you can't put your hand down your pants and like adjust things in public. Like, what do you don't do that. You don't do that. But men do it. Men do it all the time. Men do it all the time and it's no big deal. They just do a quick little and it's done. You gotta adjust things. Sometimes things get misplaced or out of the way. I realize I've never felt weird or uncomfortable or awkward about a man doing it as long as they're not being creepy about it. Like, it's just a thing that you do when you have external genitalia. And once I realized that, suddenly when I needed to adjust and fix my jewelry, that felt pretty affirming. That felt pretty good. And it didn't feel awkward or weird or anything anymore in public. It was just like, oh, I physically have something external here that can get caught up and tangled and bunched and sometimes needs to be adjusted. And I'm just adjusting it like anyone else with something down there that they gotta move. And the like key turn, brain unlock, just euphoria that came with that realization was so powerful for me. And I don't even wear mine as like huge jewelry. I have some very demure 8-gauge segment rings from BVLA that I think are like 3/8 or 7/16 in diameter. So not super huge. Because that's just what's comfortable for me and my particular setup. But for clients who are doing this for gender affirmation, usually we'll do a pair of them side by side, and the goal is to wear some pretty large diameter rings, 1/2 inch, 5/8. I have some clients who for like events and occasions wear inch diameter rings. And the goal is for it to be very large, very in the way, very protrusive, very noticeable, something that they have to think about in their clothing, in how they get dressed, and how they walk, move, everything. And I'm not gonna lie, like, it sucks. Imagine waking up tomorrow with external genitalia that you've never had before and you're not used to how you cross your legs when you sit, how you stand at the stop walk, how you get in and out of your car. You're gonna pinch it, you're gonna catch it, you're gonna sit on it. It's gonna be miserable. But that's the goal, because then once you acclimate to having it there and you get used to it, I've had clients who come in and say that they feel like these piercings help them pass so much because they changed subtle things about how they walked, how they moved, how their clothing fit, how they interacted. And they said they look back at like videos of themselves and they feel so much more masculine with these piercings, not only because they physically feel a weight and a sensation and something external in that area, but because of the way that you have to acclimate movement for this. You know, that being said, that's not the effect for everyone. I've certainly had some people interested in this project. We start it, they get like a couple months into healing and they go, this shit is for the birds. I'm glad I don't have external genitalia. This is annoying. I don't like this. We're gonna put in teeny tiny little barbells. We're gonna put in small, perfect fit diameter hoops. Fair, valid. Again, it's not for me. I don't wear the big diameter hoops. It is annoying. But for people who are willing to kind of like stick with it and acclimate their life to it, it can be really gender affirming, really powerful. A lot of folks are really into like playing with weight on these piercings and stretching them out. The sensation of like weight and movement between the legs is really affirming. And there's a lot of really cool options there. You can see a lot of folks who have this project in the trans body mod subreddit, and maybe even reach out to them and see if they'd be comfortable sharing their experiences, or at least read their threads and hear about how it worked for them. But that's one of my favorite projects to do. Another personal favorite of mine is sort of any combination of vertical hood piercings, whether we do a single central one or 2 offsets or a single offset, really depends on the person, their anatomy, and their goals. I just feel like these piercings can frame the glands really nicely, and they have a lot of function, especially as things are changing due to HRT. For a lot of folks, bottom growth means new sensations and new ways of interacting with their body parts, and a lot of ways that are more similar to how you interact with masculine body parts. And VCHs can be really great for this and for this type of simulation and sensation. And a lot of folks find it to be really, really affirming. It adds like a texture and a sensation there. And VCH piercings, once well healed, can be pretty forgiving. So I have a lot of clients who remove jewelry for specific acts and specific activities and then put it back in later once they're done. Now the VCH does have some drawbacks in that there's some things that you might want to do that don't necessarily play nice with the jewelry in, but once it's fully healed and like a year old, taking jewelry in and out temporarily for things is really easy to do. I personally am very partial to the look of dukes or paired offset VCHs, one on either side. You can see a couple in my portfolio. I've always really liked them because I feel like they give the visual look of didos, which I think is one of the coolest looking penile genital piercings that we do. And I'm a little bummed that I'm constantly talking people out of them because they have such a high risk of migration and rejection, and they just don't really stay very well. Hood piercings, however, don't carry that risk, and I feel like you get a very similar, like, aesthetically pleasing accent with hood piercings, especially with the paired offset ones. I think just like a really, really good look. And with any configuration of VCH, whether it's single or paired or offset or whatever, there's a lot we can do with custom jewelry. I know there's a few makers out there who are making like custom shields for VCHs that cover things and limit access. And some folks who are doing the opposite. They're making stuff and equipment and toys that interact with VCHs that pull everything back and greatly increase access. And all of these can be interesting different ways to experience new sensations, interact with your body and your partner's bodies, and just kind of have a great time with it. And I think these piercings are like really, really fun and really, really functional for that. I feel like sometimes hood piercings get a bit of a bad rep in the trans community just because the VCH is so socially coded as like a woman's piercing or like a femme piercing. And there's just, I think, not enough documentation out there about it on transmasculine anatomy or enough photo examples or things like that. When you search VCH, it's a lot of like girl power, take your body back, like sexy AO3 entries about genital piercings. But that's not all it is. And I think visually it can be, when you style it the right way with jewelry and place, it's very evocative of like a foreskin piercing or even like a take on like a PA or a apodravia and how it sits just like bodily on the tissue. I think like stretched a little bit with chunky jewelry, it looks super cool, super affirming. You get that sensation of like weight and something there. And it's easy to pierce, it's easy to heal, it's much lower risk than something like a triangle or a true glans piercing. And it's a really nice like entry point to genital piercing. So I feel like the VCH deserves more love. Piggybacking off of the VCH, I've recently been doing a bunch of HCHs or horizontal clitoral hood piercings with the intention of wearing barbells once they're healed and doing a series, 2 or 3, through the hood down the shaft to look like frenum piercings. And I am obsessed aesthetically. Oh my God. I think it looks so good. I think it looks so gender affirming. I think it looks so like when you style it right with chunky beads, I think it is so masculine. It is so like cool ladder, like Jacob's ladder style project coded. Like, what are we going to call this for the Transmasc community? Is it going to be Xander's ladder? Is it going to be Oliver's ladder? Someone's got to come up with a good name. We should make a thread about it in the Trans Body Mod subreddit. But no, it's really, if you're a trans man with either of those two names, I'm sorry, I just roasted the shit out of you. The Transmasc name discourse is a little bit of low-hanging fruit, but like, come on. But no, I think aesthetically it's super, super pleasing. Now, HCHs don't have as much physical function as VCHs. They don't really contact the area in the same way. But for one of my clients who I did this project on, just the feeling of like metal through skin just makes them feel less feminine, while it doesn't have like a physical functional effect, the mental euphoria and like mental effect of this has been really empowering and really impactful for that client. So that's definitely a really good option. HCHs, like VCHs, can be a little fragile with certain activities. So once those are about a year old, you can start removing them for certain things and then reinserting them immediately afterwards. That can take a little bit of time to get comfortable doing and used to doing, but a reputable piercer will work with you and get you the tools that you need to be able to easily take them in and out, give you some lessons and demos on doing it, and I promise with some practice, you'll get pretty good at it. It is not as complicated nor as intimidating as it seems. If you change your earrings or even your septum ring yourself, you got this. But aesthetically, I think it looks so amazing, and it's sort of a newer project. I don't feel like even in all of my like historical body mod research and work, I've seen like a large collection of multiple HCHs with barbells like this. I feel like this is sort of like, I don't know, like cutting edge trans genital body mod stuff that is going on right now. And I'm like super into it. And then of course, how could I do this video without mentioning triangle piercings? I have a full-length video about them here and a lot of other content that I will link here and also link on my trans resource page in the caption down below. I have a special place in my heart for triangle piercings for trans men and transmasculine individuals because a lot of times we develop good anatomy for a triangle through taking testosterone. And I think there is something just uniquely, incredibly affirming that this piercing works better for us because we're trans. I just think that's like the most powerful, cool thing ever. And I adore it. A conversation that needs to be had with triangles is that modern research, even from the original video that I made, is coming out that triangle piercings can be a little bit more impactful with certain types of bottom surgery, particularly metoidoplasty, but there is some evidence that certain types of phallo might be impacted with a triangle. There's just not enough documentation or research for us to say for sure, but I've had some consultations with a few surgeons where this is like a concern that we've kind of talked about with these piercings. So definitely something to do research on before committing to getting pierced if bottom surgery is in your future. If it's not, then it's not really a concern, and go forth and be free with your triangles. I can't wait to get my triangle done. I hope it happens in 2025, but we'll see with my travel and life schedule. But I don't know. I think it's so cool that you have such a higher likelihood of being anatomically suited for one if you take testosterone. Just that fact alone is like really, really, really affirming to me. I'm not gonna go in depth about triangles in this video because I talk about them like a shit ton all over the place on the rest of my social media and content. I do a lot of them. I enjoy doing them. I think they're very rewarding piercings. Again, I can't wait to get mine done. But I think it is like, when I think of TransMasc genitals, like the triangle right up there at the top of the list. Now, this is in no way like an exhaustive or extensive list of genital piercings that you can get or that might be affirming for you. I have clients who have full sets of inners that are super affirming, full sets of outers, Christina piercings, aka pubic mound piercings. I know I said I was going to use anatomical language, but I don't know. Christina just, we can also say pubic mound. That would be like technically anatomically more accurate, or I guess like vertical pubic mound piercing. That's super affirming. I generally try and talk people out of fourchettes if they're doing anything penetrative because I just find that they don't hold up with migration and use over time. But there are as many combos out there of piercings that could be gender affirming to you as there are individual people getting pierced. So it's not like you're locked into just these suggestions I've made today. These are just some examples of projects that I've done or I'm currently in the works with clients, or have spoken to folks who wear that I know can be really affirming and really aesthetically pleasing and really functional, that I think can give a nice baseline and a nice jumping off point if piercings are potentially like the bottom surgery plans for you. And if you think piercings would be gender affirming and that this could be what you need to feel comfortable in your own skin, hopefully these descriptions and these breakdowns give you some ideas, get the gears turning, let you think a little bit about what it would be like to do some piercings and have that gender affirmation and that euphoria. If you have further questions, my inbox is always open. I'm not always the fastest to respond, especially when I'm traveling. So I say that if you're not an in-person client and it's not an emergency, please give anywhere from 24 to 72 business hours for a response. But I do answer every single message I get. So if you'd like to talk with me directly for advice about a genital piercing project, or finding a piercer in your area who you trust to do this work, or just sort of getting started with further research about this, my inbox is open, my email is open. Like, please don't hesitate to reach out. I want to help people with this sort of thing, and I want to make myself accessible to do that. So I am here to help. Thanks so much for sitting down and hanging out for this one. I had a lot of fun putting this together, and it's YouTube, so I can't show any examples, but if you guys want to see some examples of this work, check out my Twitter, check out my portfolio on my website. All right, have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.